In times of peril, safety is a coveted thing, worth more than the brightest jewel, an assurance amidst desperation. But misfortune has no loyalty. It strikes where it pleases, playing no favorites. Or does it? Some are spared by chance, others by God's grace. Then there are those who remain untouched for reasons no one dares to name aloud. I've seen such places, quiet, unscarred by fire or fever, when everywhere else burned. But the people, they do not smile. They look over their shoulders when no one's watching. Their eyes are empty, anxious. They speak softly of blessings, but never of thanks, as if they know the difference. The curse causeless shall not come, says the proverb. I agree. There's always a reason, always a cause, a price to pay. I wonder, is it worth it? 1623, Brno, the Bellmaker's Sacrifice. A tale from the Book of Silas Crowe. I trudged through the dust of Moravia. The year was 1623, though time didn't mean much to a wanderer on the road. The wind, low and colorless, carried the stench of old fire and forgotten dead. My boots split at the soles, my coat stiffened with soot, my hat frayed and torn at the brim, and ash freckled my spectacles. My lips were cracked, my throat full of dust. I hadn't eaten in 2 days, but I kept walking. The land was the same as it had been for days, hollow. The sun rose and fell, but the smoke never cleared. Villages burned to their bones, wells choked with ash. Fields where wheat once stood now bristled with stakes and silence. No birds, no songs, just the slow groan of a world bleeding itself dry. A dry croak broke the stillness. I didn't turn, didn't flinch, when a pair of talons landed on my shoulder like a shadow returning to its master. There you are, I murmured. I thought you'd finally flown off for good. Raven laughed, low, raspy, amused. I swallowed bitter saliva, hoping to clear my hoarse voice. What do you want? I asked. Raven didn't answer, of course. He only turned his head, his beak fixed like a signpost. Up ahead, past a bend in the road, tucked between low hills and half-shadowed tree lines, a city stood. Whole, intact, stone walls, red-tiled roofs, clean towers untouched by smoke. Proud, alive, or so it seemed. Well now, I slowed my steps, brushing the ash from my spectacles. At least there must be food and water. It took me almost an hour to reach its half-open gates. A pair of guards stood in a sleepy daze, gaunt men in mismatched bits of armor, their tunics stained and threadbare. One leaned on his pike in a daydream. The other's helmet sat askew atop a mop of unwashed hair, shadowing eyes gone dull. More scarecrows than city guards. Above them, a rusted lantern swung in the breeze, its light long gone. I half expected to be stopped, questioned, or turned away, but they didn't even seem to notice me. From a distance, the city might have appeared like a diamond amidst the sands, but inside, it looked wrong. Everything was still. The buildings leaned in close, built tight together in the old way. High gabled rooftops of red clay, timber frames weathered to gray, narrow windows shuttered tight. Laundry hung motionless between windows. Doors stood half open, as if on purpose. Even in war times, the streets should echo with carts and footsteps and gossip. But there was only the tap of my boots on the cobbles, a place holding its breath. I passed an old man sweeping the same patch of stone over and over. He didn't look up. A shopkeeper across the street stood motionless behind his window display, hands clasped, eyes fixed on something just beyond me. No more life than his dummies. Raven ruffled his feathers. Uneasy. I felt it too. That sense of being watched not by one man, but by a whole city pretending not to see me. I turned a corner and found a woman kneeling by a fountain, wringing water from a cloth that looked clean now, spotless. Her hands were red from the cold or scrubbing, hard to say which. Like the old man before, she ignored my approach. I stopped a few paces away and cleared my throat. "Pardon," I said, "what city is this?" She flinched at the question itself, as if it had been too long since anyone asked anything at all. A moment passed before she answered without lifting her eyes from her labor. "Brno." The word came brittle, like dried twine. "Brno," I repeated, tasting it. I was on the right path. The woman said nothing more. She dipped the cloth again, wrung it, and repeated, as though some unseen stain refused to lift. "It's always this quiet?" I tried to coax more. She glanced at me then, just for a breath. Weariness rimmed her pale eyes. "If you're here to ask questions," she said, "you want Mr. Andre, the Bellmaker." "Bellmaker?" I echoed. She nodded once, then returned to her cloths. Scrub, scrub, scrub. "Where do I find him?" I asked. She answered with a raise of her chin toward the western rise, where a tall, narrow bell tower loomed above the rooftops. "You'll know it," she murmured. "It's the only place where the birds don't land." I followed the woman's direction, weaving through crooked lanes and alleys where shutters closed just before I passed. The further west I went, the more the silence thickened, as if sound itself had deserted the place. Snuggled between houses, the tower rose like a splinter in the sky, stark, weathered, its stones darkened by time. Ivy, long dead, curled near the base. The wood of the heavy door had gone gray from rain and age, but someone had polished the iron fittings. "Odd," I said to Raven. "A single tower with a sole purpose of housing a bell, not attached to a church or any other building." Raven stirred on my shoulder. He let out a soft click of his beak, feathers ruffling against my ear. With a croak, he took flight. I stepped forward and raised a hand to knock, but the door opened before I could touch it. An old man stood on the threshold, tall, thin, clad in a workman's apron darkened by soot and oil. His rolled sleeves exposed wiry forearms. His eyes, pale blue, nearly colorless, had seen more winters than they should have. A length of crimson cloth wrapped his brow. His hair, the color of ash and iron, was pulled back into a low, rough ponytail, the strands fraying like the ends of a burned wick. "Welcome, traveler," he said without surprise. "I was told you're coming." I tipped my hat. "Wanderer." The inside of the tower was cooler than I expected. Stone walls rose high, wrapped in a dampness that had no season. Dust clung to old tools and darker corners. I smelled iron, wax, and something older, like mildew and burnt oil. I followed Andre up circular steps until we reached an upper level. A small table waited near the furnace hearth. Humble, clean, intentional. Upon it lay a loaf of dense rye bread, a crop of soft cheese flecked with garlic and caraway, and a shallow bowl of thick lentil stew still steaming. A flash of dark beer completed the set, bits of moisture sweating down its side. I blinked at the sight. I wasn't aware Brno made a habit of feeding strangers. Andre didn't look up from the workbench. He adjusted a gear with careful fingers, thick and callous, nails dark with the years. "It doesn't," he said, "but you've come far, further than most, and not by the roads men travel." He offered a toothy grin. "Where's your bird?" "Not sure," I said. "He flew off into the tower's shadow before you opened the door. He'll be back, though. He always comes back." "A wise creature indeed," Andre remarked. "Please, do enjoy." I said, "You know him?" "Not him, no, but I've known another like him. Once." Andre looked up. I met his eyes, pale but not dull, like frost on old glass. We nodded knowingly, in respect, in solidarity. Fate had a way of convening its actors. I tore a piece of the bread, dipped it into the stew. The flavor was earthy. Lentils, root vegetables, and something smoked, a hint of marrow, perhaps. Not having eaten properly in days, I tried hard not to make a spectacle of it. "Moravia's bleeding." Andre set aside his tools and sat across the table. "Raids from the north, hunger in the east, pestilence from the rivers. Vienna, that's what it can, but the war burns faster than the empire can heal." He looked through the window overlooking the city. The Protestants, the Catholics, all drawing lines in a land that's been lived in for centuries. "And the people caught between," I muttered. "Always." "Yes," he said, voice low. "Such is the fate of mortals. Yet Brno stands untouched." "It appears so." He made no further comment about the subject, poured 2 cups of the dark beer, and pushed one across the table. "What brings someone like you this deep into this country?" "My wandering." I shrugged and took a sip of the beer. It was thick, slightly bitter, and rich with malt. "And Raven, what about you? What keeps someone like you in this city?" He was about to answer when a low, rounded toll trembled the wooden planks beneath my boots. It came like a breath drawn deep and forced out slow. It left the air thrumming, like the last note of a song. I looked up. Above us, in the highest arch of the tower, the bell swayed, slow, dreadful wake. Its surface was dark bronze, but streaked green in places, the patina of centuries and smoke. Etching line its strip, worn with age, not letters, not quite, but symbols, marks that may have been script once, now softened by time into something more primal. No rope attached to it, no intricate mechanism. It's as if mere wind had moved it. Andre said nothing. Down below, the city shifted, doors shut, shutters drawn. Vendors made quick signs over their chests and stepped back from their wares. A woman pulled a child close and darted inside. The guards at the gate stood a little straighter, hands resting on hilts, eyes scanning the streets like they were counting heads. Every one of them moved with the solemn precision of many rehearsals. I looked back at Andre. "Bellmaker," the woman said. "That's your bell?" He wiped his hands with a cloth and folded it, almost with reverence. "It is. It doesn't mark the hour. Brno has its ways," he said, "and its warnings." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. Warnings of what? Andre paused, offering a faint smile. "That would depend on who you ask," said the Bellmaker. "The council says it's only a relic, something to stir vigilance in a city grown too calm. The faithful say it's divine, a miracle of protection. The old ones, though. He trailed off. What do the old ones say? I ask. Never mind what they say. It rings when it must. The air was thicker now, pressing, heavy. The old man's fingers flexed and stilled, not a tremble of weakness, but something else. Memory, perhaps. Regret, longing, sorrow. A frantic knock came from the tower door downstairs. Andre nodded once. It begins. What does? I asked. The old man rose without answering and went straight down. I followed him through the winding steps, the stone walls cool against my palm. At the door stood a boy, no older than 12, cap in hand, eyes wild, flickering like candle flames in a draught. Andre bent, and the boy whispered in his ears. The Bellmaker's eyes widened, and his mouth sagged. Tell your father I'll come before sunset, Andre said. The boy nodded and fled down the street. We watched him go. What I've always feared has come to pass, Andre said, his expression grim. And that would be? The fool, he muttered. He thought he could cheat the bell. The flame danced in the Bellmaker's pale eyes, like a spirit wandering a frozen waste. Murder, he said, not unforeseen. Yet I kept convincing myself it would never come to this. Alas, I was wrong. I eyed him, curious. I've seen bells used in churches, I said. In ships, in battlefields. I've seen them toll for birth and death, for fires and weddings. But this one? I glanced up again, toward the hidden weight above. This one tolls alone, singing its own rhythm. I turned to him again. Not without purpose, I'm sure. Is this what keeps you here? The bell keeps Brno safe, said the Bellmaker. But you've lived long enough, Silas, is it? To know such protection does not come cheap. I understood now. I've heard of such things, I said. In Russia, they speak of domovoy sealed in ovens. In Wales, spirits in stone walls. A sacrifice tied to the bones of a building. Or in this case, I looked up again, hung in bronze. I cocked my head toward the city below. And they're okay with it? The people know, Andre said. The moment it rings, they've learned. It only took one winter for them to understand what silence can no longer teach. His jaw tightened. The bell never rings without taking something. It drives people to murder? He shook his head. No, the bell doesn't take sides. Doesn't favor one over the other. It takes at random. But it has an insidious effect on weak minds, as you've heard. He might have endured toll after toll, but eventually his will breaks. A madman he is for thinking he can make the uncertain certain. He feels the bell would take him next, which is preposterous. No one can guess, not even I, its maker. I let the silence hold before saying, the soul that sinneth, it shall die. Ezekiel, if I recall. But not all who die have sinned. He gave me a tired look. You know your words well. Too well, some might say. I nodded. So, the man takes another's life, thinking he can save himself from the bell. What happens next? Andre slumped back in his chair. Gnarled hand clutched his temples. It never happened before. Nonetheless, it's a bad omen. The bell takes its sweet time, usually a week or less. Those would be the days of eerie silence, suspicious glances, weary steps, locked doors, and shuttered windows. of empty streets. Of prayers? I offered. Another toothy grin answered me, bitter, cynical. If they're so fond of prayers, he said, they wouldn't ask me to intervene in the first place. He bobbed his head. But I hope, yes, of prayers as well. I pondered his words for a moment. A bad omen, he said, was fitting. What if there's no death after a week? I asked. What then? Andre picked from between his fingers. All hell broke loose. Chaos. More murders. And the bell would cease to take, for the people would feed it themselves. Take matters into their own hands. That's the worst outcome. And the better one? They would start sacrificing convicts. Until they ran out. Correct. Chaos would come nonetheless. It's only a matter of time. We sat in silence after that, each with his own thoughts. Brno was none of my business. It's only a temporary respite between Vienna and Prague, toward wherever fate led me. I'd be gone before nightfall, and perhaps would never see the city again. I was about to take my leave when Raven's croak drew my attention. The window framed a church. At the foot of the cross, he perched, staring at me. Fine, I muttered to myself. Sometimes, despite the desolation of my wandering, I wish the bird would just leave me be, just for once, so I could stop guessing the hidden meaning behind his beady eyes. It's obvious. I turned to the Bellmaker. We must silence the bell, never to let it ring again. You should stop tampering with fate. Andre let his hand fall from his temples. You don't know what that will bring. I know what it's already brought, he said. A silent killer. This city is so afraid of turmoil, it keeps quiet when death roams its streets, as long as it doesn't take more than its fill. It welcomes paranoia like a priest to a deathbed. That solves nothing, Andre. You've only invited something from the void into these streets. Brno will never know peace, with the bell's looming shadow over it. He turned to the flame as if it were calling him. The bell stays where it belongs, he said. Vienna is too far, too slow. The Emperor's army are thinning. Wallenstein's commands mercenaries, not patriots. You think the Swedes are what we fear? They sack and move on. Wallenstein's men stay. They drain the city dry in the name of the Emperor and call it righteous work. The Protestants raid from the north. The Hungarians stir unrest from the east. Even the plague fights for territory. If the bell falls silent, Brno will fall. Not in years, not in months. Within weeks. To everything, there is a season and a time for every purpose under the heaven. I know the scripture. The Bellmaker glared at me. Then you know it's not your place to seize the clock, I said, to hold back the hour. That's not mercy, that's vanity. It's time for you to move on, Andre. The Bellmaker rose, his face flushed. And go where, wanderer? Do what? To serve what purpose? Shall I walk the earth without aim, following a bard like you? Each of us has a cross to bear, I answered. Brno is my cross. Andre barked and collapsed into his chair. It doesn't have to be. We must silence the bell. You'd have me destroy her? He said, voice cracking like dry bark. Her? I asked. Lenka, the old man said. His eyes burned with painful memories. Her name was Lenka. She was like a daughter to me. The one rule we're meant to abide by, he broke. You shouldn't let yourself be too attached to mortals, I said. You know that. Hypocrite. Andre's furious gaze saw through my pride. Don't pretend you yourself have abandoned your humanity. It's still our cross to bear. Yours and mine. Perhaps fate Circumstances have been kinder to you than to me. I didn't argue. The Bellmaker closed his eyes in deep pondering. They asked this of me, Silas. They saw through me. You never know how people would react to the unnatural, the otherworldly. Some would reject it like the plague. The desperate ones would welcome it like salvation. So, I said, you gave the city your miracle. He shook his head. A miracle would have asked nothing in return. I knew the price they must pay. I told them so, and they backed down at first. But when misfortune crept closer, devouring our neighbors, they despaired. What about Lenka? His stern face softened with remembrance. She was an orphan who stole my heart when I arrived in this city a long time ago. I mustn't linger, I knew, but when it's time for me to leave, I couldn't part with her, knowing she had no one else. So, I stayed. The city outside was so quiet, I heard the wind screeching through the streets like the unfortunate souls of sacrifices. Unlike the city, he said, Lenka displayed no fear. She didn't push me to agree with the council's plea. She's always on my side. Too great was his sorrow, his rigid, unyielding eyes watered. Too late I learned. She showed no fear because she believed I was the only protection she needed. And I failed her. The Black Death, I muttered, of course. The Black Death, he hissed. There's no rest for the wicked. I toiled and labored on the bell day and night. I allowed only a little sleep. I ate and drank as I worked, a blind hope, for I knew it wouldn't reverse what had transpired, but only protect what was left. She became the first of many, I said. Andre nodded. Tears spilled and fell. It's her dying wish. She knew the bell would need a soul, something she could offer freely. It's her final gift to the city that had given her nothing but grief. She is a noble soul, I said. Pity how the world treated her. I leaned forward and entwined my hands on the table. Then again, that's often the fate of the righteous. Loved too late and lost too soon. Andre untied the crimson cloth from his brow and wiped his tears with it. This was her scarf. She used to tie it around her neck when it got chilly. He put it on the table. I know I've done wrong, Silas, and my punishment awaits. But you can't silence the bell without dooming the entire region, not just Brno. I peered into his piercing gaze. What do you mean? Tempting fate is like pulling a bowstring, he said. You unleashed a powerful force when you release it. When you ban fate, it tends to snap back to its course. Many will pay the price for Brno's borrowed time. My jaw fell. What have you done? I've spent years studying this ancient magic, he said. Trust me, Silas. I believe there's only one way to silence the bell without putting more at risk. I'll see to it myself when the time comes. There's a time for everything, right? Please, leave this matter to me. I nodded. It seems you leave me no choice. Raven croaked and fluttered his wings. Behind the cross, the sun dipped low, painting the sky in blood. We walked side by side in resignation. Brno stretched in tired rows, bathed in the last golden wash of day. The wind shifted, stirring the scent of chimney smoke and cold stone. The streets were even emptier than before. No more ghosts in borrowed skin, caretakers of silence. We passed the fountain, and the woman was no more. I wondered how she decided when it was clean enough, or if that ever mattered at all. A shutter creaked. A dog barked once, far off. Nothing more. Life here didn't move, it lingered. We stopped at an intersection when the half-open gate came into view. 2 different guards stood watch, as lifeless as the last. "I doubt you'd be coming back," said the Bellmaker. His crimson cloth swirled behind him like blood in water. "I might," I tipped my hat. "If not to see if you keep your promise, then to meet a friend." "I'd like that," Andre smiled. "I'd like that very much." I caught doubts in his eyes, cold as death. "Pray tell, how will you plan to silence the bell?" Andre frowned. At that moment, he looked older than all his years. A chuckle escaped him, dry, without mirth. "I'll give the bell a taste of an immortal soul." I took off my spectacles to see him eye to eye. My heart ached for him. "You don't mean that. How about your salvation?" He spread his arms. "What about theirs? Besides, I'll get to see Lenka again, I hope." He placed a friendly hand on my shoulder. Wisdom brimmed in his old eyes. "And what of salvation? Do not worry, friend. The Catholics might say one thing, the Protestants another. Yes, they hold the truth, whether in part or in full, I don't know. But we know better. Salvation is a grace given by God alone." My eyes widened. "The thief on the cross." "The thief on the cross," he echoed. "For that, I will not despair." Raven circled overhead and landed on my shoulder like an omen of farewell. "That's my cue," I said. "Thank you, Andre, for your hospitality." "You're most welcome, friend," he said. "Say, where are you heading?" I rubbed dust from my spectacles and put them back on. "Prague." "Prague," his brow knitted. "Strange choice. Most folk are trying to leave that city, not walk into it. Why?" I shrugged. "No reason. It's simply on the way." "Right, I almost forgot. Wanderer." The last edge of the sun caught his features, hard-lined, hollow, but still full of hope. "God be with you." We clasped hands. "May God have mercy on you," I said, "and me." On my shoulder, Raven croaked his farewell. Andre tapped his beak once, like he understood. Around us, Brno faded into the blue hush of evening. The bell tower loomed, silhouetted against a sky gone violet. As I walked toward the gate, a bark echoed, low and rough. "Wojciech, is that you?" Andre shouted with joy. I paused and looked back. There, from the narrow gap between 2 bleak houses, came a black dog, lean and broad-shouldered, with a coat like coal dust and eyes like stone-wet stone. Its ears stood, strong paws scraped the cobbles. There was purpose in every step, as if it had been waiting for the right time to return. Andre knelt and embraced the dog. "I haven't seen you in years. Where have you been?" I watched the 2 of them for a moment longer, then faced the road ahead. Andre had packed me some of his rye bread. I pinched a small piece from my coat pocket and gave it to Raven. Wojciech's return gave me comfort. Andre broke the law, a sinner like the rest of us. But perhaps his sacrifice would speak louder than his sin. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more tales from the Book of Silas Crowe. Until next time.